Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to LP Tremors, where we talk all things vinyl and horror. Joining me again, Peter Jones.
Hello.
How's it going, Peter?
Great, Tyler. Good to be here. Nice. Round 2, Iron Maiden.
Fuck yeah. So yeah, as Peter briefly mentioned, we are going over a little bit of this Iron Maiden series where we are going to be reviewing and discussing in full every single studio album, going from the debut, which is out last week, so go check that out. So from the debut from 1980 all the way to 2021's Senjutsu, or maybe we'll have something surprisingly in 2003, who knows. But yeah, so today we are going to be reviewing the sophomore studio record, Killers. Iron Maiden Killers, coming out in 1981. So this is following up, obviously, the self-titled debut from 1980. And literally 1 year of a difference, and so much shit has changed. First of all, producers. So Will Malone is stepping down very short term with the band, and now enters the legendary, iconic Martin Birch. I'm going to be discussing him quite a bit during this discussion, but Martin Birch, he is the main contributor to all of the classic Iron Maiden records you could think of. So this is his debut, Killers, but he is involved in Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, all the way up to, I believe, Fear of the Dark.
Fear of the Dark.
So, so I'm talking just about 10 years with the band. And this is like the iconic era of the band. This is what the band is very known for. And without Martin Birch, these albums wouldn't be what they are. I'll get into him, momentarily. But yeah, so Martin Birch, this is his debut. And also another debut, Dennis Stratton is out, and the legendary Adrian Smith is entering the room. Adrian Smith, again, he is someone I'm going to be talking about ad nauseum because he's just that fucking awesome. But yeah, Adrian Smith, iconic guitarist, and he is obviously still with the band till this day. And this is also going to be the last studio record to feature vocalist Paul Di'Anno. Yeah, so with that being said, we have vocalist Paul Di'Anno, Steve Harris, of course, on bass. You got Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, and you have Clive Burr continuing on drums. All right, so overall thoughts on Iron Maiden Killers. Peter, want to take it away?
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Great introduction.
Thank you.
And so, I got this in real time, pretty much on the day it was out, or no longer than a week after. We were looking for it. We were excited to get it. Obviously, the album cover draws your attention instantly. It's clearly one of the most iconic photos of a now fully embodied Eddie. It's not just his head.
Look at every metalhead ever with an Iron Maiden t-shirt. 95% of them are going to have this shirt, including myself. I have a few Killers t-shirts.
Absolutely fantastic. You said, February 2nd, 1981.
Yep.
It was gold in the US, although I don't know when they've recertified Maiden. That seems low to me after all these years.
Yeah.
That most of these earlier ones, before number, are only gold. So I question that one. But yeah, Martin's here. And of course, we even know Martin from obviously legendary stuff with Deep Purple, Whitesnake, Rainbow, Sabbath. You just Blue Oyster Cult.
Yep.
Martin, genius, absolute genius. And the fun story is that they wanted Maiden to do the first record.
Yes.
We wanted Martin to do the first record, and even Martin would have done it if they had asked him, but they were scared to ask him.
Right.
So they just didn't even bother asking him. It's like, you idiots, I would have done it. And you're like, oh crap, we should have asked. But that gives that first album that unique, special charm that we talked about last episode. And so it stands by itself as that one-off without Martin. So that's great. Man, overall on this record, where do I even start? It's so good. Sophomore efforts can be hit or miss. They can be, as they say, you get your whole career to write your first album, but you don't have nearly as much time to write subsequent records, especially when you're touring a lot.
Right.
Well, they are no they are in no shortness of brilliant songs here.
No.
To me, simply stated, this is, and Bruce is the next element, and we'll get to that as we go to subsequent records. But right here, to me, this is fully developed Iron Maiden. It's the Iron Maiden sound. It's the Iron Maiden mix. It's the Iron Maiden songwriting. It's the Iron Maiden performances. Steve now becomes what he has always been since, the instrumental focal point of this band. The amount of bass playing and parts and really cool licks and things that he does on this record are astonishing.
Yeah.
It's just one track after the next. He's just full throttle. It's all Steve. The crazy right hand of his that just blurs across his Fender Precision.
Yeah.
And it starts from strength and ends with strength. I go back and forth, my first or second probably favorite, and it'll depend on the days.
Yeah.
And having Adrian along will be way more fully realized in subsequent records, and it doesn't take long for him to really put his thumbprint on the Maiden world.
Right.
And this is a one step even up, which is kind of hard to say. Clive's drumming goes to even another level. And, we talked about it last episode, and we're going to bring it up again, that P word. There are still a lot of punk elements in this.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of very aggressive drum parts, riffing. But it's just some of the most spectacular stuff in their entire library.
Yeah.
The whole album at the time, other than one track, has been played live. Only one hasn't, and I'll get to that in a second. I will say this is both a pure joy and a disappointment. And why is it a disappointment? Because to me, this is the album that Maiden has forgotten.
Yeah.
Since Bruce joined the band, it's barely like this album exists. We talk about the favorite tracks on here, and there's a small handful of them. Clearly, the ones for me that stand out, Rothschild, just absolute vintage Maiden.
Yes.
Just wicked guitar playing, great intro with Steve and Clive wailing away, great lyrics, great delivery from Paul Di'Anno, whose voice is even stronger than it was on the debut. It's got a different tonality because of Martin, but it's very aggressive. Going again right into just a blazing drum beat in Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yes.
And it carries on what we talked about before, that horror theme. Obviously, we're talking Edgar Allan Poe here. The master of the macabre, right? It's just, we all just stop for a second. Edgar Poe, and
absolutely.
So I mean, you get the instrumental, "The Ides of March," which is really cool. Great intro. I do see that it was played once, so maybe they tried it once live, and then probably just went to the tape if they opened a set with it. Otherwise, it probably didn't get played.
Right.
But it's got a great introduction right into the opening riffs of Rothschild, and the opening. I love the bass with the harmonics, and we talked about that in the last episode. That starts in a couple songs from their first record. And again, Steve with his walking bass line, and then all of a sudden Clive out of nowhere, he's just thundering it away, and then just off they go. Another Life, again, a really cool drum intro. you know, and then this great lead, and then the two-handed that we talked about in the first episode from Clive. Yes. So we've already seen all of the Clive-isms right away in the first 3 tracks, you know, with that right hand we talked about. So all these are the classic feels from the first record are carried over to this second record.
Right.
We get to another fully realized instrumental, Genghis Khan, which is great.
Yep.
But again, my standout tracks here are going to be Rothschild, Murders, and then you get to the middle part between the end of side 2 and side 1 and side 2 in LP days. You get Innocent Exile, another standalone Steve Harris intro lick, in a slower, much heavier, and this is more metal. This is not the same kind of punky, you know. And then into my favorite introduction of any Maiden song, Killers. Just perfect. It's just so bloody perfect.
That bass riff, it's yeah.
Yes. And it builds and builds. And when Diano screams is, and they go into the riff. And again, something really fast. And what is so cool is Dave Murray just runs his finger along the fretboard from the pickups down to his headstock. So every harmonic across the spectrum.
Oh my God, those pinch harmonics.
They just kick right down.
From what, like the 12th, 14th fret all the way down.
Yep, just runs them straight down the neck. Yes. And like, what a cool, easy riff, but so creative.
Yes.
And it just, you know, and then it just builds up. And unison riffs, great unison riffs, contrast riffs. And then it gets to the song that has never been played live. And it's actually the longest song on the record.
Right.
Prodigal Son. And like Strange World on their debut, I love this song.
Yes.
I absolutely just love this song. Melodic as hell. Great groove. Great solos. It's an outlier. It doesn't really fit, just like Strange World didn't fit with the rest of the record, but it still sounds like Maiden.
It does sound like Maiden, yes.
And again, these are songwriting styles that disappear after this record. You know, Purgatory, Twilight Zone, and Drifter. Twilight Zone is a North America edition. Yep. It wasn't on the original, and I would have a hard time having that not be there.
Right.
You know, and what a great guitar intro riff.
Bluesy. It's just a bluesy hard rock number. I love it.
But now, as we were talking, it's more metal. It's more straight ahead from Clive. And then Drifter is kind of more back into the a little quicker, a little up tempo, but they had the great breakdown sections. And I love the slower middle of Drifter where the solos come in. Again, a staple from their debut record. You know, so from top to bottom, there's really not any weak tracks in here, in my opinion. I just think it's solid from top to bottom. There are days maybe I like some of the higher points in the first album better.
Yeah.
And the first record is represented live way more than Killers is.
Oh yeah.
I mean, obviously you add in Iron Maiden, which is played every night.
Right.
You know, sometimes Sanctuary's in there, Running Free comes in and out, Fan of the Opera comes in and out. But other than Rothschild, none of these songs have been in the sets for decades.
No.
But they're still some of my absolute favorite Maiden songs, and the production is spectacular. Everything sounds great, and I just think it's just a perfect record. So I mean, that's can't go wrong with this at all. It's very different than the debut, and I like that. I look at them and like them for different reasons.
Right.
And don't see them as a direct competition or comparison with each other. There's elements of both that are cohesive and what's the word, common to both. And then they've added some new elements. They've added some little more heavier writing, and that follows up on the next one. And so it's a nice progression for them songwriting wise. And unlike the first record, even though there was just a small handful, this whole record is almost entirely Steve Harris's doing. I mean, these are his songs. Yeah. Paul added some stuff on Killers, and Murray got some stuff on I think he's either, was it Twilight Zone?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Other than that, everything is Steve Harris.
Right.
And
absolutely.
Yeah. And at that point of their career, have at it, because every track's working for me. So I don't care, if nobody else contributed, that's okay. But I just think it's an amazing album, and any live bootlegs or recordings you can hear from this Killers tour are gold.
Oh yeah.
They are just spectacular.
Yes.
They are just a band completely on fire.
Absolutely.
But as we know, Paul was having issues, and
a lot of turmoil around this record.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hence why, Bruce came in for Number of the Beast and so on and so forth.
Right. So, I mean, it's the end of a very short but very impactful beginning of a band. Not unlike Deep Purple. You've got 3 studio records, and they even have a big hit in Hush, but they decide that their singer is limited and they need to go a different route. And it went from strength to super strength, and some would suggest that's kind of where Maiden is headed with their subsequent releases.
Oh yeah.
But I will always have a huge soft spot for both of these. And like I said, Killers is either 1 or 2. When we're done, if we rank all the albums when we're finally done.
Yeah, we will.
It's going to have its rightful place. It's going to get the honor it deserves. So.
Absolutely, yeah. If you were to rate this album, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think that number would be?
I go back and forth, like I said, with the other record. Today, I've got it at a 10.
A 10, okay.
I do. I've got it at a 10.
Okay.
Yeah, it's never going to fall lower than 9.75. So it's either my first or my kind of 1B.
Right.
But they are interchangeable, and this was, I listen to this album all the time. And so, I mean, it's not a refresher or anything. These are just songs that I just absolutely love. I mean, especially side 1. When you go through Rothschild, Murders, Another Life, Genghis, and Innocent Exile is a pretty superior side of really good, hard Iron Maiden. And so, I love this record to death.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, this record, it's a fantastic record front to back. I couldn't agree with you more. This is a very interesting record because we kind of hinted at this a little bit, but I feel like the album cover gets much more credit than the actual album itself. A lot of people don't talk about these tracks, with the exception of Wrathchild, of course. This is, I guess you can call it a live staple because it is shown up frequently in Iron Maiden set lists. But the rest of the songs, like Genghis Khan, like you said, that's only been played, once? Twilight Zone, Purgatory, Murders in the Rue Morgue. These are songs that definitely showed up in the earlier days, but they haven't been shown up in fucking forever.
Right.
It's sad. This album, and you mentioned this, Peter, this album is very different from the debut. On the debut, there was this, street punky atmosphere that does show up on Killers, but there was a lot of progressive elements and moodier tracks on the first record. This record, I honestly think this is thrash before it became thrash. A lot of these songs just hit you in the fucking ass, front to back. And I mean, it's not a very long record either. It's probably
41 minutes.
41 minutes. Yeah, 35, 41 minutes. And it knocks you in the fucking ass. And right right after that beautiful atmospheric opening of Ides of March, right when it gets to Wrathchild and you hear Steve Harris says, it's just a freaking train wreck in the best way possible. This is a fantastic record. I do have a few issues with this record. Issues that I might get butchered, but fuck it, right?
Bring it on.
Bring it on, right? So, first record with Martin Birch, legendary producer, as I said in my intro. I think now we have this. Martin follows so many great records. So, Number of the Beast, Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son, all the way to Fear of the Dark. As far as the 80s albums go, this one actually might be my least favorite out of the 80s. And not necessarily because there's really any weak points, because I honestly don't think there are too many weak points. I mean, there are some flaws I'll get into here and there, but I just think that each song kind of just gels with each other. It's very, it's I don't want to say one trick pony, but there's not much of a change in this record. Prodigal Son is probably the only track that throws you a curveball, but the rest of the tracks, they kind of follow the same type of tone. Like there's still it's very like a thrashy, punky, bluesy kind of feel with all these tracks, except for Prodigal Son, which is definitely a curveball. But the first Iron Maiden record, I just like to change. I just like all the curveballs. You didn't really know what to expect. Like it starts off with two punky, edgy tracks like Prowler and Sanctuary. And then it goes right into Remember Tomorrow, which is very moody, you can watch my full review. I'll link this in the video somewhere. But in other words, I just like to change. I like all the curveballs. I just like the unpredictability. This one, I don't want to say it's predictable. I definitely don't want to say it's a one-trick pony, because that's definitely an over-exaggeration. But it's tough to explain. It's just
there is no Remember Tomorrow or Phantom on this record.
There's no epics. You're not going to find any, Iron Maiden isms. You do.
No.
Like, as far as their progressive standpoint, you don't see those Iron Maiden isms.
Like we said, other than Prodigal, which is 6 and some change, Killers is the longest at barely 5 minutes.
Right.
Everything else is 4.5 minutes. There are no epics on this.
There is no
from lengthwise.
Lengthwise, structure-wise. This is just a straightforward, punky, and honestly just borderline thrash record. So that's one thing that I think the debut did better. However, there are instances on Killers that I think progressed from the first record. For example, Peter, you mentioned Clive Burr's drumming. I think Clive Burr really, really steps it up a notch. There was no fucks given with Clive Burr on the first record, but this one, he's just going ballistic. This is just, if you listen to the tone off the first record, just multiply that speed from Clive Burr, and this is what you get. Like I said, this is very, very, very different from what you're going to hear on the first record. So Clive Burr really steps it up a notch. Adrian Smith, I think, knocks it out of the park as well. What a debut for Adrian Smith. And nothing to take away Dennis Stratton, because I think he does do the first album a lot of justice. But Adrian Smith, my God, what a way to come out. This is a fantastic debut for Adrian Smith. And
well, we can't also dismiss the boost in chemistry.
Yes.
Because he and Dave were old friends.
Right.
And they wanted him earlier, but he, for whatever reasons, did not join the band.
Right.
But so from a chemistry and getting along with each other, this is now a front line of Harris, Smith, and Murray that is extremely cohesive.
Yes.
Both playing wise and personality wise. They genuinely liked each other. had similar thoughts and musical likes, and which was the outlier with Dennis. Dennis wasn't that guy.
No, he wasn't. No.
So that makes a huge difference.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, you're definitely going to see a little bit more chemistry off this record. And Steve Harris, he's another one that I think stepped it up quite a bit. This has Steve Harris all over. For example, the title track Killers. It's so simplistic.
Yeah, he's just walking octaves.
He's not doing anything crazy. It's just he's just casually just going through the frets of his bass, and it's one of those instances where you don't want this to be a really complex riff. It's just casually, and it just builds up. It's a nice little slow burn, and then all of a sudden you hear Dave Murray's pinch harmonics go right across the frets. It's beautiful.
And we are introduced for the first time to the gallop.
Yes. I was about to mention that too. The gallops on this record are insane. Genghis Khan is probably the perfect example of the galloping riffs on this record. I mean, like one thing you can really take away from the opening riff to Genghis Khan is those hardcore gallops that just kick you in the ass. Really, really awesome stuff here. So most of the members, I think, really improved from the first record. Only one member, I think had a better performance on the first record, and that is our vocalist Paul Di'Anno.
Okay.
Now, I don't think Paul Di'Anno sounds rough on this record. He sounds exactly like the tone this album is presenting. It's presenting of a more in-your-face, hardcore, just balls-to-the-wall record. And I think Paul Di'Anno's vocal style matches great with this record. However, I just think you have those tracks on the first Iron Maiden record, like Remember Tomorrow, like Strange World, especially those moodier tracks. The title track Iron Maiden, Fan of the Opera, where he is just really stretching out his vocal ability. It's really he's just really cranking up to 11.
You think it's too safe on Killers?
I think it's a little too safe on Killers. I don't think he's really stretching out his vocal. He's not really, at least from what I heard. There's instances where he does, and I'll get to those. But for the most part, I think he's just staying in that little one tempo, sounding a little bit rough. But then again, I can't really take anything away from Paul Di'Anno because that's kind of what this record is representing. It's representing more of a street, trashy, dirty record. And Paul Di'Anno sounds great with that type of style. But I just want to hear more of that, stretch that Paul Di'Anno can really do. I do think he does have a few of those on here. For example, Killers, when he opens up with those screams, yeah! He's really going up there. And another track, Purgatory. This is probably one of my favorite choruses of all time. Please take me away.
Right.
Like he's really going up there, and it's not like that is the Paul Di'Anno I want to hear. But for the most part, he just kind of stays in that one tempo throughout most of these tracks. But there are a few, standouts that you would hear on the first record. I don't want to say that he sounds bad because I'm really not. It's just that on the first record, he really stretches vocal ability. Remember Tomorrow, Fan of the Opera, those tracks, he's really stretching it out. And I think at a lot of points sound better than Bruce. So there you go. So that's a little bit of Paul Di'Anno. But man, this record, it's still a badass record. And I know I kind of gave it a lot of crap, but this is really, really a fun listen. It's borderline thrash. And I mean, everybody knows the main hit that's going to be on this record is definitely Wrathchild. That's going to be the track that this record is mostly known for. You've seen it in Iron Maiden set lists, and it's just what a killer track. And then then you have Murders in the Rue Morgue, which I will scream to the top of my lungs. This is a thrash metal song. It is so aggressive. Paul Di'Anno is just sounding dirtier than ever, and then it just punches you in the face with that chorus. Murders in the Rue Morgue. Looking for a topo. It's
right.
It's a dirty, dirty track, and this is a thrash metal track. This is the first thrash metal track I could think of. Brilliant track. Then you have Another Life, and Another Life, it goes back to I kind of want to say, if take the UFO's Obsession.
Oh, okay.
Take that record and then just put a punkier edge twist to it, and then you have Another Life. That's Another Life. It follows that, it's especially in that opening riff, a nice little bluesier tempo. Like, it follows, that little like bluesy staple that you would hear in a UFO record. But it just cranks it up to 11. It's just a punky track. It's a very punky track. It's in your face, and it does follow that horror atmosphere. And I should have mentioned that Merzen Rugmark, obviously. But this whole record, I think, as far as the horror atmospheres, this one is definitely a scarier record than the first record. This is kind of funny to think about, but if you take the first record, you're going to think of it more of like a psychological horror, maybe a supernatural horror. This is just a full-blown slasher.
Everything's got a Jack the Ripper mentality to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Walk through the subway as his eyes burn a hole in your back.
Yes.
His footsteps behind you, he lunges, prepared for an attack.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
scream for mercy. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Like, especially Killers. Killers is, you can easily make this into a slasher horror movie, and this is what you're gonna get. So it's definitely taking a step up with the horror atmosphere and the horror themes. So yeah, that's a little bit of Another Life. Then Genghis Khan, now I mentioned in the first episode that Transylvania, it is a good instrumental, but it's definitely a little bit of a lower point off the first record, and both of us kind of agreed on that. Right. Genghis Khan, I think, does it so much better. I mentioned earlier about those galloping riffs on Genghis Khan, and Dave Murray and Adrian Smith really knock it out of the park with this track. These guys just, riffs galore all over this track. Brilliant instrumental, and this is coming from somebody that's maybe not an instrumental type of guy, unless it's like a hardcore jazz record. It's bands slipping in instrumentals here and there just don't do a lot for me. Genghis Khan is definitely an exception to that. So yeah, that's a little bit of Genghis Khan. And then Innocent Exile. You know what I actually got from Innocent Exile? Because it does still follow that, it's metal. It's definitely metal, but still follows this like kind of like a bluesier tempo. As far as the vocal style goes, and as far as, what Paul Di'Anno is doing with his vocals, I got a lot of Aerosmith's Nobody's Fault.
A little bit.
If you listen to, like, for example, Aerosmith's Nobody's Fault, everybody screaming, running for the scene. Mother is so empty, nothing to live for. Like,
right. A lot of the phrasing is the same.
Yes, by Paul Di'Anno's phrasing. That's kind of like a funny thing I got from this track. But yeah, this it's still a hardcore track. And obviously Nobody's Fault. We're not talking about Aerosmith here, but Nobody's Fault is definitely one of Aerosmith's heavier tracks. But yeah, Innocent Exile is definitely full-blown metal. I love this track. Definitely a sequel.
And to jump in a second, both Joey Kramer and Clive Burr use a similar two-handed hi-hat pattern on Nobody's Fault and the intro to Innocent Exile.
Absolutely.
So there's that as well.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. But then it goes into Killers. And Killers, I kind of hinted at this a little bit during this discussion, but Killers is my favorite track off of this record. And not only that, it is one of my favorite Iron Maiden tracks of all time. This track is fucking brilliant. I love the slow burn. It starts off with this creepy atmosphere. And again, going back to Dave Murray's pinch harmonics right off the bat after, Paul Di'Anno's last scream. Ooh, yeah! And it's just, it's hooks galore all over this track. And I mean, words can't describe how much I love this track. It really sets the tone for this record and makes this record what it is. Killer's fantastic track. And then that's when the curveball track comes in, Prodigal Son. And Prodigal Son, it follows that Strange World thing where it's very moody, very melodic. I do prefer Strange World over Prodigal Son. I just think Prodigal Son, it's one of those tracks that, is maybe a little bit longer than it really needs to be. This is kind of like the start of the Iron Maiden critique where, they're repeating that same riff over and over and over again. I think this is kind of like the start of it. It's just a track that might be a little too long, but this is still a brilliant track. Beautiful melody. And this is actually one of the instances where Paul Di'Anno does really stretch his vocal range. Again, and I mentioned this in the previous video, Paul Di'Anno, he is, when it comes to these balladish melodic tracks, I really think he knocks it out of the park. Oh, definitely over Bruce if you were to ask me, but I think he does sound really good on this particular track. Very moody, very melodic, and this is just a nice curveball. And I wish there was a couple more of these tracks on this record. Again, I'm going back to Paul Di'Anno just staying in that same tone the rest of the record. This is a track where he's really shining a little bit more. So yeah, Prodigal Son, great ballad, great just moody tempo, really nice curveball. Then you get into my second favorite track, Purgatory. This, again, that chorus is one of my favorite choruses in the Iron Maiden catalog. Paul is the main highlight off this track. It's still carrying that, dirty, down and dirty, raw, metal punky kind of tone and feel to it. But it's just, this is what I wanted to hear from Paul Di'Anno. This is another instance where I really wanted to hear Paul Di'Anno shine like he does on this particular track. Fantastic track front to back. Twilight Zone, it kind of follows the same issue as Sanctuary, where, depending on what version of Killers that you have, this is a track that may show up, may not show up. Like, for example, this is a 2015 reissue of Killers. Twilight Zone is nowhere to be found on my version.
That's wrong.
Yeah. I do make up for it because if you see right here, this is the Woman in Uniform record, little EP. So it has Woman in Uniform, it has Twilight Zone on here, it has Invasion on here, a track that got left off the first record, but
right.
Yeah. So I do make up for it with this, and that's just, if you can find that out in the wild, I highly recommend it. Great stuff. But yeah, Twilight Zone, it follows like this it's going back to this bluesy feel. I love the opening riff on this particular track. But yeah, it's a track, it's probably like 2 minutes and change, 2:30, something like that.
2:33, yeah.
2:33, yeah, exactly. Not a long track by any means. It comes and it goes. And then you got into Drifter, and this is probably my least favorite off the record. Just because it's kind of following the same, critique that I'm giving with this record, where it's not necessarily doing anything new, really. It's just kind of like, it's hard to find differences between, Drifter and Purgatory, or Drifter and Innocent Exile. It's kind of doing the same little thing. It's just carrying that same tempo. I don't think there's anything too memorable off this track either.
Some of the weaker riffs that they've done.
Yeah. There was nothing, and I felt this for a very long time because I do have a lot of history with Killers. Drifter is, one of those tracks that just kind of comes and goes, kind of like whatever track to end the record. I would have rather, if it ended with Killers, that would have been fantastic. Even something like, throw me a curveball and say Prodigal Son closes this record, right? It's I just find it's kind of like a whatever way to end the record. But it's still a good track. It's still a fun track. It's nothing offensive here. It's just kind of like Maiden going through the motions, in my honest opinion, with this particular track. But yeah, that's pretty much 9 tracks. Still a fantastic record, front to back. Like I said, I think this is the weaker record out of the 80s records, if you were to ask me, in my humbled opinion. But they're just records I go back to a little bit more than Killers. I gave the first record an 7.5 out of 10, I believe. I'm probably going to give this record a solid.
Be brave.
Yes. I'm going to give this a 7.8.
There you go.
It's a 7.8 for me. I think that there are a lot of stuff to love off of Killers, a bunch of standout tracks, a lot of underrated tracks. But I do think that, each track just blends with each other. It's very, again, I really don't want to use the term one trick pony or, predictable, because that's very over exaggerated, but each track kind of falls into each other a lot, except for Prodigal Son, which is that little curveball that I like to see.
Less distinguished,
right? And because of that, I think some of these tracks are just a tad unmemorable, just a tad. And I'm talking about tracks like Drifter, for example, which isn't really doing anything new. It just kind of keeps going. Even Twilight Zone, to an extent, is like that as well. But yeah, fantastic record. You're really not going to go wrong. This is a definite must in your collection. Peter, let me ask you something. Iron Maiden Killers, if you were to walk down the street and somebody asks you, hey, what is on, I want to get into Iron Maiden, would this be one of the records you would give them?
If they have no history with the band at all?
No history, not heard a single note.
That's always a tough question with me, Tyler, because having come from the beginning on almost any band we're ever going to talk about on any channel we're on, unless it's, too early 60s where even I was not old enough.
Right.
I've always said to go from the beginning, but that is both a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
But you also don't want to get trapped in just give them the status quo popular one and say, here, go to this.
Right.
Wow.
Like if someone was to say, hey, give me 3 Iron Maiden records to listen to.
Oh, okay. Well, 3's different. Yeah. 3's different. Yeah. Killers has to be one of them.
Yeah.
The other 2 we'll save for after we address them.
Absolutely.
And would I pick Killers over the first record? Probably, only because the first one is so unique.
Yes.
That I wouldn't want them to be too disappointed that the rest of the catalog's nothing like it.
Right.
Because it isn't.
Right. You're right. It's not.
So maybe Killers is a little safer.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a very difficult question.
Right.
I think maybe it depends how old they are, what other stuff they've listened to. I mean, that's a cop-out answer. But
I know what you mean.
Some 16-year-olds, hey, I've heard about this Maiden thing. What would you say? I'd say, okay, check out these 3 in your scenario, but Killers would be one of them in my case, because I think there's a lot of maturity from songwriting and things that happened on this that do carry over to subsequent records.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Do you feel that the songwriting was maybe a little bit stagnant because Steve especially was feeling limited by what Paul was able to deliver? Because you get the sense that the songwriting was progressing a lot faster than Paul's capabilities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think another step up, and I completely forgot to mention this. But you did definitely mention this. I think the songwriting definitely takes a gigantic leap with this record compared to the first record. The first record is the songwriting is very simplistic, I would say, and we did brush on that quite a bit in the last episode. Examples like Prowler, walking through the city, looking oh so pretty. I just got to find my way, and it just kind of continues that. For example, the Iron Maiden, the title track. Now, Iron Maiden can't be fought. Iron Maiden can't be sought. Iron Maiden's gonna get you, no matter how far. Yeah, it's definitely a lot more simplistic on the first record.
There's more storytelling here.
A little bit, yes, a little bit more storytelling. And yeah, this record, it's just, you're definitely it's a lot of the lyrics are a little bit more metaphorical. It's definitely still in your face, but they're using much more complex words, I would say.
Yeah, on some of the more epic tracks, especially Murders, but if you get to Innocent Exile, those lyrics could easily have been written for the first record.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you do have those instances where, it is very simplistic, like, again, Innocent Exile, Another Life to an extent.
Right.
But yeah, even one of my favorite tracks, Purgatory, but overall, songwriting definitely did a gigantic step up with this record. Yeah. So is there anything else you wanted to quickly add off of Killers, or is there?
I just think, they've got 4 records.
Yeah.
Their first 4 records all have a change in them.
Right.
If we use that as a sports analogy, the quarterbacks had 4 offensive coordinators in 4 years.
Right. Right.
That can really be disruptive to a band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we don't even get till their 5th album where we have a repeat of the same lineup.
Right.
That is really significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're gonna have those little changes right up until Peace of Minds, and then then it takes a little bit of a break, and then we're gonna get into another lineup change,
but what I see here, personnel notwithstanding, is progression. The band is evolving.
It's evolving,
and whether that means they need to replace somebody to continue to evolve, they haven't been shy to do that.
Right.
Other bands, a lot of people would have said Kiss should have dumped members a long time ago, instead of sinking the ship going, okay, wait a second, but different images and all that kind of thing. But I think that's important. 4 different albums, 4 different lineups. So they have to be different.
They have to be different. Right.
The consistent part is Steve.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the important thing here.
Right.
Is that this is, for good or bad or different, this is a move in a direction. You decide for yourself if you like where they went or they didn't. We've expressed that here.
Yes. Absolutely.
But change with this band in the beginning is an essential part of their development.
Right. Absolutely. They're always changing. In my opinion, no record sounds the same, really. But anyway, so yeah, that is our full review over Iron Maiden Killers. 7.8 out of 10 and 10 out of 10 record.
10. Yeah,
absolutely. This is a fantastic record. You're really not going to go wrong with this record. It's definitely a must. If you are a metal fan, if you are an Iron Maiden fan, this is definitely a must. Peter, I understand you do not have a YouTube channel, but
that's correct.
You do appear quite often on channels like the Contrarians and Rock Stadium Nation. Is there anything coming up that you can talk about?
Let's see. I've got a couple episodes coming up. I'm doing a Rock Daydream Nation. We're going to do a real deep dive into Sabotage by Black Sabbath.
Nice.
And then moving forward, once we get more into January, got a couple shows that we're doing with Grant and Grant's Rock Warehouse. We just added a new show to the mix. We are going to go through the 4-album discography of the band Stars, and we're going to pull our 2 favorite tracks from each of those studio records.
Nice.
Which is like having 3 siblings and having to leave one of them out. Pure torture. I'm like, oh my God, I can't pick 2, especially from the debut. Are you kidding? So we're going to go through that. A band that's just grossly overlooked. And anytime you can talk about Stars, I'm all in. And then we're going to do a debut episode, hopefully, if it catches and is interested by the fans. We're taking 1970 as a start, taking the Billboard year-end Hot 100, and we're each going to pick our top 10 singles from 1970. Again, an extremely challenging prospect for somebody who knew off the top of his head 97 of the 100 songs without having to pull them up. So absolutely. There's a lot of history and a lot of familiarity with some really great songs over a huge range of styles and bands. And maybe one of the most varied eras of the rock era, the early 70s. You could just go from Alice to Carole King and everything in between. So so we've got that coming up. And and then I'm waiting for scheduling where David Gallagher and I are going to jump into James Bond. And we're going to talk about all the James Bond films from 1 to 25.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So a lot of really cool stuff cooking for Peter. I will be linking all of those channels down below. So check the description down below. You are watching LP Tremors. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to be talking about another album that's literally right behind me. Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. Arguably their most popular album of all time. We're going to be talking about Bruce Dickinson and Number of the Beast. So that's going to be next week. And then so on and so forth. Continuing on with the discography studio records. We're going to be talking about Peace of Mind and then Power Slave. List goes on and on. Stay tuned every single Monday. We're going to be filming a new Iron Maiden discussion. Also and speaking of David Gallagher, Ryan Gavalier, two of my dear buddies, every bi-weekly, so every other Friday, we talk about Friday the 13th movies. So we currently have 7 episodes out. We have another scheduled date this coming Friday. We're going to be discussing part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, and we're going to be going from there. So kind of similar to this, but it's going to be bi-weekly every Friday, every single Friday the 13th movie.
I presume that has nothing in common with the Muppets.
I don't think so. A little different.
Why is everybody taking Manhattan, for God's sakes?
Yeah. Right? Come on. But and then a few other things I'm doing in the works. I do have I haven't been on camera solo in ages, I feel like. So I have a few solo stuff in the works. So my personal top 10 records of 2022, I will be shooting that very soon. A few other things, I'm going to do a beginner's guide to Aerosmith. So I'm going to be going over 5 records that I would give to somebody who doesn't know a lick of anything of Aerosmith. That's going to be in the works as a solo. So I'm going to be talking about 5 records I would give to a new fan. But other than that, stay tuned for more records. Stay tuned for more horror-related content. All of the above. I'm not going to talk to you like you're 5. You see the subscribe button, you see the like button, do whatever the fuck you want. Drop down below in the comments your thoughts on Iron Maiden Killers or the band in general. We would love to read those. And that should just about do it. I think this is a good point to wrap this thing up. Peter, any closing remarks? Anything you've been itching to say that you forgot?
No.
All right.
I am silent today for once in a while.
Oh shit.
No, it's just I love the series. It's very few bands have discographies that are this long.
Yes.
That can have such great conversations over.
Absolutely.
And again, folks, these are our opinions. It doesn't make something right or wrong.
These are opinions. These are our opinions. Absolutely.
There's no better or best. There's just your preference is what you
personal
like.
Preference, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I keep telling that to my cohort over there. So
yeah, right.
He doesn't get nervous giving Killers a lower rating, right?
Hey,
go for it.
Hey, it's all you, man.
You
all
asked.
Right, so for Peter Jones, my name is Tyler Gopian. This is LP Tremors. Stay tuned for Number of the Beast. We are going to be doing that next Monday. And as always, up the irons.
Up the irons.
Stay metal. Stay scared. Bye, guys.